When you date someone and eventually move in with them, it's generally because you feel safe with that person. But what happens when you break up and you are faced with the stark reality that you are not at all safe with them? I do want to issue a trigger warning. This is a very tough case to listen to. It has a lot of SA. If you are not up for that, I appreciate your watching, and we'll catch you on the next video.
In May of 2015,
The victim in this case
was living at 12042 Cemetery Road, Rogers, Arkansas, with her ex-boyfriend, Brian Post.
The victim and Brian
started living in the home together while they were dating, but eventually their relationship started to deteriorate. So they moved into different bedrooms at opposite sides of the house. After they broke up,
the victim
said that Brian started making dark comments to her and speaking about sexual fantasies that he had that involved her. These were fantasies that he hadn't shared with her during their time together.
According to the victim,
on May 17th, 2015, everything changed.
That day, the victim went
to watch Brian's son perform with his band, and she didn't get back home until around 11 p.m. that night.
The victim said that she just wanted to relax and take a bath.
So she took a Powerade that had been opened out of the refrigerator. She ran a bath and she went and sat in the bathtub and drank her Powerade. She said that she was scrolling through Facebook and relaxing. And then before she knew it, she was waking up in the bathtub. She felt super groggy and her water was completely cold. She said that she had no idea how long she was asleep and she tried to get out of the bath. She was able to get out, but she had a difficult time walking. She wrapped herself in a towel and then she went to go sit on the couch. While she was sitting on the couch, she was still drinking the same Powerade. She did say that the Powerade didn't taste any different than it normally did, and she had no idea why she was feeling so groggy like she was.
The victim said the next thing that she knew,
Brian had walked into the room.
The victim
said that there was a lot of things she didn't remember, but the things that she did remember, she remembered very clearly. She said that Brian grabbed her by her ankles. He had one in each hand and he dragged her down the hall to his bedroom. She said that he placed her on his bed face down
and placed a pillow under her hips in order to assault her. The victim said that she could feel
things that were being done to her, but she was too groggy and too helpless to do anything about it. She said that she couldn't move any of her limbs at that point in time.
According to the victim,
Brian raped her many times over, and then he would take her to the shower. He would shower her off, and then he would bring her back into the bed and continue his attack on her.
The victim
said that if Brian wanted her to look at him,
he would grab her hair
and turn her head toward him. She couldn't turn her head herself.
The victim had dogs
in the home, and Brian threatened repeatedly to bring them in and
slit their throats in front of her
if she did anything to try to stop his attacks.
The victim
believed that the attack lasted for at least a day.
According to the victim,
Brian left several times during the attack. She thought maybe he was going to do service calls because he worked as a plumber at the time. He would leave to go do things, and then he would come back and continue attacking her. At certain points during the attack, Brian did things to
the victim, like
wrap her in a trash bag like a diaper. He poured rubbing alcohol and peroxide on her. He repeatedly took her to the shower, cleaned her up, and brought her back and continued raping her.
According to the victim, the more damage that Brian caused
by his attacks, the more he said he accomplished his goal.
At one point, the victim said she woke up
and she was wrapped in a blue tarp on the living room floor.
She really thought at this point in time that Brian was just going to murder her. He started cutting on parts of her body.
And at this point in time, she really wished that he would have gone ahead and murdered her because she would have preferred that over continuing to be tortured.
The victim reported
that Brian gave her drinks all during the attack. which is weird because he certainly wasn't doing anything else to help her, as he was carving on her body and doing just about irreparable damage. So this part is pretty graphic, but the victim said that Brian started cutting on her buttocks, and then he continued to cut slowly down the back of her leg. She said that he took his time. He was really meticulous and cut even into her groin area. The victim said that she blacked out and then woke up at the bottom of the stairs in the master bedroom. The victim said that the last thing that she remembered about Brian was he walked down the stairs, spat in her face, and kicked her in the side. On May 19th, the victim's mother had been trying to get a hold of her for some time, and she hadn't been able to make contact, so she went to the victim's home and actually found the victim. She was the one that called police to help her daughter. Police felt like the victim's injuries were set up to make it appear that a dog had attacked the victim, but it was noted that none of the dogs had blood anywhere on them, and that the cut lines were incredibly straight and went all the way from her buttocks down to just about her knee, and at some points were almost to her bone. It wasn't until over a year later, on July 6, 2016, when a new detective was assigned to the victim's case and actually was able to speak to her. The victim had extensive injuries and was in the hospital for over 2 months when she was first found, and she had to have so many surgeries after that to try to repair the damage. So I can understand to some extent why it took so long for police to talk to her, but still there was never an arrest made before that point because police hadn't spoke to her. When the victim did speak with police, she told police that she did have a life insurance policy that when she and Brian were together, Brian was the beneficiary of, but unbeknownst to Brian, whenever the two of them broke up, the victim actually changed her beneficiary to her ex-husband. On July 26, 2016, an arrest warrant was finally issued for Brian Post. Brian Post was charged with attempted capital murder, kidnapping, and rape. Brian Post entered a plea deal. He pled guilty to sexual assault in the second degree, rape, and first degree battery, but he was to be sentenced by a jury. And this is where things really went off the rails for me. Brian Post was sentenced by a jury to 13 years in prison for the rape of the victim. The repeated rape of the victim. He was also given a 20-year suspended sentence on the other two charges. Brian Post will also have to register as a sex offender. We should all take comfort in knowing that Brian Post will be eligible for parole in as early as 2025. So he could be coming to a place near any of you. My heart goes out to the victim in this case. I wanted to add some thoughts to the end of this video. I really don't know if this case gets to me so badly because his sentence was only 13 years, or because I empathize so much with the victim, or maybe it's a combination of everything. You will notice that I removed the victim's name from this case because this victim is still alive and somewhat getting around after Brian's attack, and I don't feel like she needs to be any more victimized while we're discussing this case. I didn't really feel like the probable cause affidavit or any information I could find about this case really got across the levity of the injuries that the victim suffered in this case. The victim, if you will look at the back of your leg, had the entire back of her leg to her knee cut off by a crazed man. I did find that the victim has said that her leg is paralyzed from the knee down. My completely non-expert opinion would be that that probably makes sense because there had to have been so much nerve damage there. Like he carved her up in a way that I would think is even worse than if a person dismembered a dead body, because this was a living person. She has to go on living the rest of her life with these injuries. And not just that injury, but he raped her to an extent that she had to have
reconstructive surgery.